Let's look at the changes that the MAC-10, MP9 and MP7 received in the recent update in more depth. Fun fact, none of their recoil patterns have changed. It's only the random spread that has. In other words, the amount by which bullets deviate off this perfect pattern. This is the bit that can't be compensated for by moving the mouse, so obviously the less of it, the more precisely you'll be able to compensate for spray. Firstly, the MAC-10, which has changed the least. Its first shot is slightly more precise, but only by a tiny amount. What's really strange is that it's become less accurate when stood still and more accurate when running and gunning. Bear in mind that all of these adjustments are relative. I'm not saying that you'd be more likely to hit when running than when standing still. The balance has just been changed when compared with how it was before the update. In other words, the MAC-10's role has been shifted towards run and gun play. If it's any help, the running accuracy improvement is most noticeable at the beginning of the spray, so you'll perform well if firing in short bursts when on the move. Next is the MP7, which has been improved across the board. The first shot accuracy has improved more than the MAC-10's, making it only slightly behind cheap rifles in this regard. When stood still, spraying is slightly more precise. The real improvement comes when running and gunning. There's no denying that the update has made it easier to hit people when on the run. This is the biggest change in the update as far as I'm concerned. The MP7 has always been a good all-round SMG, but this update may actually make it worth buying when compared with other weapon categories as well, especially when you've got too much money for a pistol but not enough for a full rifle buy. Crouching accuracy has also been improved a bit. Interestingly, it's no less accurate when you're crouch moving, so you might as well make the most of it and make yourself harder to hit at the same time. The accuracy of both this weapon and the MP9 benefit from crouching more than most weapons. And finally, the MP9. This weapon originally had worse first shot accuracy than the MAC-10, but has now been massively improved to the extent where it's now even better than the MP7 in this regard. To further improve this weapon at range, the damage drop-off has been reduced. It was already better than the MAC-10 in this regard, but is now the best of all the SMGs, with damage dropping off just 13% with every 500 units. All things are relative, however. Most rifles only drop off by about 3%, so the MP9 still isn't exactly a great long-range option. Its accuracy when stood still or crouched has improved. You can now see individual bullet clumps when crouched, meaning that learning its recoil pattern in this mode will make it surprisingly deadly. Funnily enough, running and gunning has not been improved at all. Unlike the MAC-10, the MP9 now encourages players to stand still more when using it. Any improvements people feel when using this weapon to run and gun is simply placebo. Technically, its run and gun accuracy has been reduced, but this is cancelled out by the improvement to its base accuracy. The equip animation remains broken. You are unable to fire for a split second after the animation has apparently ended. I'm worried that if this isn't fixed soon, the CSGO will remain unplayable, so please fix it, Valve. So how do I feel about these changes to the SMGs? Does it make CSGO into Call of Duty? Not exactly. Let's face it, the MP9 and MAC-10 weren't popular in the first place. I've always considered them both to be rubbishy, cheap and inaccurate spray weapons. Valve has taken steps to differentiate them by giving them a particular strength. And I like that. However, I don't see them replacing the rifles anytime soon. It may, however, make them an interesting alternative to a pistol buy, which I feel is currently overused. The MP7 has had the biggest change. It is certainly more viable when running and gunning. I believe that this puts it more in line with the P90's purpose, and may make it the most potent sub-$2,000 weapon in the game. More than anything, this update shows an interesting insight into where Valve is steering CSGO. By improving the stats of SMGs, they're trying to promote an interesting middle ground between eco rounds and full buys, particularly if the price of rifles is increased further, as we've seen a nod towards with the M4A1S in recent times. I'm not saying that the SMG's stats should remain as they are, but this update shows that Valve is encouraging players to use the previously overlooked SMG category. Remember earlier when I mentioned how some people had experienced the placebo effect with the MP9's running accuracy? This isn't as silly of them as you'd imagine. When used the way they're meant to be, the SMGs can be fairly effective. It's just that people have avoided them due to the reputation that they've had. Valve almost needs to improve their stats until they're overpowered to encourage the community to begin using them. Look at how they've managed to get players using almost every type of pistol in this game. For now, SMGs are currently the perfect counter to pistol buys and earn you more money than using rifles for this purpose would. Because of this, I suspect that the improvements to the SMGs will remain at least until after the next large tournament. Only once Fnatic has crushed everybody with their superior run and gun SMG tactics will Valve then decide on what to do next. Who knows, once the SMGs are properly balanced, perhaps the LMGs will receive some love. Personally, I've never been a fan of games where certain weapons don't serve a viable purpose, so I'm very excited to see the long-term implications that this update has on the game. We may be seeing the introduction of another weapon category into mainstream CSGO, which will be the biggest change to the game in a long time. Done! I'm cut. Thanks to SlothSquadron for the research on these changes and for proof checking this video. Check out his nicely updated spreadsheet on weapon values below.